Hello, everybody. Welcome in. The markets are insane. We're getting kind of a year-end rally, but not the way you would typically expect it to come. But today's story is interesting. I'll get to that in a second. But first of all, thank you all for joining. Happy Wednesday. Crypto market cap 1.7 trillion. But the Bitcoin proxies and the crypto proxies are going through the roof. Every single brokerage and retirement account is trying to get their hands on crypto exposure. Saying it for a long time, but now it's next level. Bitcoin's up 1% for the day. MicroStrategy's up 11%. $65. It's like, how is this even possible? Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a minute. We'll dig into it. But Bitcoin market dominance is still a bit under 50, but that doesn't matter. It's still the heavyweight gorilla in the whole crypto space, and it's going to bring a lot of money in. Crypto fear and greed is 73, and now we're going to talk about the 2025 price targets. I spend a lot of time modeling, analyzing, estimating, building, so we can have a good handle on how far we could go. And again, these are price predictions. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have models, and I do have history, and I do have data. And from that, you can make some pretty good conclusions. And again, none of this is ever investment advice. It's just edutainment. And don't forget to subscribe. The most unique content anywhere that you will never find anywhere else. Now, the story. I began this journey. I thought I'd just do a short one today, take a little time off and rest. But that never happens. In fact, I started this yesterday, and the idea was to analyze the amount of brokerage accounts on the earth, how many there were, how many they had on average in them, and what would happen if they made a small allocation to Bitcoin. Well, that's just part of the journey. Then it became a very elaborate price prediction model, looking at a ton of data and condensing it all down for you so you can make your own decisions. And then we'll talk about MicroStrategy as well, because that thing has been on fire. And in full disclosure, my MicroStrategy position just completely smoked my Bitcoin position because it's insane. Everything in this market is up crazy. Anyway, let's start with the first part, which is the total number of brokerage accounts. So there'll be a lot of numbers as usual, but it's a numbers channel. But here there are 138 million brokerage accounts that we know of across all the big players. This doesn't include other kind of funds that manage money on behalf of high net worth individuals. Just brokerage accounts, and there's 138 million of them. Biggest one is Fidelity, with about 43 million accounts, and then the Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade, and they have about 34.5, etc., etc. And you have probably, this doesn't capture all the data for all the Japanese funds and maybe many of the European ones, but some of them. But it just shows you we're just taking a small slice, a small piece. And next, we'll look at the average account size for all of these firms. So what I did was pulled in data as well about the actual average account size in thousands of dollars. So Fidelity has the biggest, about $258,000, and then it goes all the way down depending on where you are in the world. But I'll back into some other numbers too, because I like to cross-check things. Then when you look at all of these fund managers, Fidelity, brokerages, whatever else, you will see here that the total assets managed at the end of Q3 2023 by broker is a lot. It's 23.6 trillion. The biggest is now Fidelity with 11.5 trillion in there. So it's big. And if you look at other data points, like the median brokerage account balance by age group, we know that the older people are, the more Lindy effect, the more time you have to be invested, the more money you make, the more you save, and the more your pot grows. So don't let this put the young people off. In fact, there's very many young people. There's an 18-year-old in the community today who had over 100 Tesla shares at 18. Unbelievable. So anyway, super happy to see that. But you can see here the median balance per brokerage account for just Americans is, if you're in your 20s, you got about 10,000, 30s, 30,000, 40s, 68,000, 50s, 135,000, and 60s, 210,000. And if you calculate, that's just the median, and I can back into the average from that. Now the average per account is about 90,996. Call it 91,000. But that's the median, and there's a difference. So what I did was calculate the total number of accounts, which you can see here, approximately 138.3 million. And that doesn't include everything. And then I calculated the average balance per account math by backing into it and taking all the total amounts of assets under management divided by the number of accounts. You get about $23.6 trillion and 138 million accounts. That's about $170,752 per account. Why do we care? Because the next part, what would happen, because most of these accounts, the vast majority, 99% of them, have zero allocation towards Bitcoin right now. Now, spot ETF is coming. What would happen if they start allocating a little bit? So the first cut, I took the average account, say it's 170 grand, and they allocate 5,000 or 10,000 or $15,000 towards Bitcoin. What would that mean to the Bitcoin price? Well, if the total number of accounts allocated just $5,000 towards Bitcoin, that would actually pump the Bitcoin price to over $1.024 million, which is insane. And by the way, I'll get back to that 1.024. Now, when I talk about 5,000 going from the average account that's worth $175,000 into Bitcoin, that doesn't mean everything starting January 1st, 2024. That's over the next 3 to 5 years. It'll be gradual or maybe sudden. We'll see. Either way, it's going to be incredible. Next, 10,000 per account, you get to a $2 million Bitcoin price. And if it's 15K, it's 3 million. These numbers are outrageous. I know that. But the asset's also super scarce and super hard, which makes it incredible. Remember, this all builds up to the final crescendo at the end of the video with the final price. And hit the like if you're learning something new and you like this type of content. So there's 2,500 people who are interested in it right now. Next, instead of 5K or 10K or 15K, I allocate a smaller amount, just half of 1%. So if you've got, say, 100 grand in your account, you're just putting in a small amount of pennies. Okay, so here, this again takes the same stuff, the 23.6 trillion in assets under management. The spend would be half of 1% of that amount. Then the Bitcoin multiplier, which gives you the impact on the Bitcoin price, which takes us up to 2.5 trillion. Then you divide it by the number of Bitcoin, and the impact of Bitcoin price, $165,000. So if they just allocate half of 1%, that takes the Bitcoin price today to $207,000, or an ROI of a lot. But remember, this is just a small amount. There are some people that will allocate 10%, some people 5%, some people 0%. So just taking half of 1% is extremely achievable. Now, if they go a little heavier, 1%, and everybody, by the way, not financial advice, but even people like Ray Dalio and many other top-notch investors believe a 5% hedge into Bitcoin is not crazy. So we're going to 1% now, and that would take the price of Bitcoin to 372,000. And if people go to 3%, that takes it back to $1 million. You'll be hearing that $1 million Bitcoin price many times today, because there's such a thing as confluence between numbers. Now, this actually got my attention as well yesterday. Michael Saylor, who actually bought a truckload more Bitcoin, we'll talk more about that in a minute too, he put a survey out, and how high the Twitter following, and many people that follow him are actually very smart, so this is one of the better surveys, 73,500 votes, and there's still time left on the clock. But the question is, how high will Bitcoin go in 2024? Only 15% believe 50,000. 34.9% believe 100,000. 150,000 is 21.4%. And only 28%, or nearly 30%, believe we break 200,000. And that's only in 2024. That's only 7 months after the Bitcoin halving, which isn't that much time. So I did an EV calculation on these numbers, and here we are. So this is the price option, the percentage of voters, number of votes, midpoint price, and the expected value. I love doing EVs across different points. So if you take 50,000 times the percentage of votes, you get an EV contribution of 7,850. But you add all of those together, you get to 130,850. If you've watched this channel, I've spoken about a $129,000 Bitcoin price target for the bull run this year, many times this year, 129,000. Look how close that is to 130,850. It's nuts. And again, it's more kind of confluence that we have across different numbers. Now, there's a lot more. Let's look at the LILO Bitcoin Target. There's a layer in, layer out model. And it calculates where price could go based on history and other factors. And it takes us to $113,261. You don't have to write all these numbers down. I'll summarize them all at the end, and we'll see where we get to. Then, 6 months ago, I streamed, and I calculated based on history the actual price of Bitcoin if you take the average of the returns over the period of time from previous bull runs, and you weight them accordingly and assume diminishing returns, you get to $157,279. Very high, but that's just assuming history and a little bit of diminishing returns, not full diminishing returns. Then Pantera, about a month after I did that previous one, they came out with this, 147,000. This was their number, and they again took into account history, and if history repeats, what the performance would be based on multiples. But you can see the multiples diminishing, like the 93.1 to 30 to 7.8 to 4.2. That takes the Bitcoin price to $147,843. Okay, so you got a lot of good models actually coming, pretty close, surveys, etc. And that's what we like to do, is try to find a signal in all of the noise and hone in on where this could bring us. Now, ready for the quick summary? What I also did, analyzed all the price targets from the lowest to the highest from Twitter over the last 3 months. And I took the low and the high. So this is X analysis. The low is $87,971, and the high price target is $177,384. I also put in my IA 0.5% allocation model. This takes us to 207,000. I've got the IA, which stands for InvestAnswers, historical analysis model, 157K if history repeats. I've got the LILO model, which predicts price based on history, 113,000, and my sandbag model for the year has been 129,000 all year. Then Pantera, 147,000, the Saylor survey, 130,850, and you take an average of all of those models, you get to $143,861 for Bitcoin for this bull run. Could it go higher? Could it go lower? Could it not break 100? Yes, all of those things are possible. But this is interesting. I'm very curious as to how this will pan out, and I've got a monster Google sheet with hundreds of tabs of all my price prediction models from 2017 onwards, and I keep every single one so I can always reflect back and see how good they were. By the way, in 2017, my Bitcoin price prediction for Bitcoin for 2030 was $107,000. So I was like super sandbag, super conservative, but I bet people a Bitcoin that we get to at least 107 by the year 2030. Anyway, that was in 2017. A lot has happened since. So let's talk about some other news too. While we're on the subject, Michael Saylor, his bag grows. This is just released a few hours ago. They acquired an additional 14,620 Bitcoin for $615.7 million, average price $42K, with the price of Bitcoin now at $43.4. Okay, they've already made 1,300 times, what's that? How many Bitcoin is that? 14,000 times 1,300. They've already made like lots of millions of dollars. I can't figure it out. My brain is too tired. But that is kind of crazy. And their average price of Bitcoin is $31K. They are now making far more than $2.5 billion in their investment. In fact, I'll show you right now how much they've made in their investment. This is from Econometrics, and shout out to Sanjay, who shot it to me just before the stream. But they now own 189,150 Bitcoin, and that's the equivalent of 0.9% of the entire Bitcoin supply. But remember, 4 to 5 million are lost, so they have way more than 1.4% of the total supply, if you ask me. And that is also about 17% of the coins controlled by Satoshi Nakamoto. And the return on the investment is 37% so far. So all of the mocking and ridicule that happens on the internet, guess who's smiling now? Mr. Michael Saylor. So let's take this one step further. Let's take MicroStrategy and estimate, based on my target of all of the models here, this is the 143,861, and pumping it into my MicroStrategy ARB model, you can see here that would take the price of MicroStrategy up to $2,034. And remember, we were buying this thing hand over fist at $190 a year ago. That's like a 10x in the stock, which is insane. But remember, the stock did 11% today, up 65 points at 665 as we speak, maybe even higher. Let's check. MicroStrategy, $672 as we speak, which is insane. Markets are going nuts. So could MicroStrategy hit 2034? Yeah. If we go to my conservative sandbag price target of 130, That would take us to 1843, and 100 grand, 1427. Either way, tons of money. But remember, as I've always said as well, this time is different. It's the first time we are going into a cycle where the supply has diminished. Normally it grows. Now the Bitcoin supply is diminishing and the demand is increasing. What's going to happen? It's insane. There's probably not even 2 million left to buy out there. And then all this money is coming in. So it's going to be a fun time. Now, getting back to the beginning of the story, I spoke about the confidence of $1 million and all the ways I backed into it. Well, guess who also says $1 million? Cathie Wood. She said the institutional push into Bitcoin will be significant to the price. Even if there's a temporary sell the news moment after the ETF approval, ARK has a Bitcoin price target of 1 million by 2030. So again, even if people say, oh, it's sell the news, it's whatever else. Human brains forget to see where we've just come from over the past few hours, days, weeks, months. Other tokens are taking a little breather after doubling in 2 weeks. It's just natural. But always, if in doubt, zoom out to find out exactly where you are. In addition, we have a tool to tell us when we get hot. And this has been designed, 20 different on-chain metrics that come in. When we're in the red zone, we know to pull the cord. So that's a signal as well for you out there if you want to know what's going on in Bitcoin and when things are getting very frothy, toppy, heavy. Subscribe to the channel. And I'll always share things openly and transparently. And a big thank you to everyone on Patreon. Thank you for all being here. And happy holidays, everybody. 4,000 people watching. Thank you for the like. Again, it sounds like hopium. It sounds crazy. Is this stuff possible? Yes, because of this tightening supply. We've never gone into a post-halving cycle with a diminishing supply. And, of course, this guy, Michael Saylor, is also diminishing the supply. He just basically prevented 15,000 people from ever becoming whole coiners in pure form. And the price targets, pick and choose what you like. If you want to go with the bear target from Twitter, you pull up your $87,971. Bull target from Twitter, 177. If you want to go with Pantera, that's one shop. They know what they are doing, 147K. Or you can take a mix of my models, add them all together, weight them accordingly, or do expected value based on surveys from Michael Saylor. With that, everybody, thank you so much to the mods in the chat. Hope you like the show. What a crazy time to be alive. I just look at the Bitcoin miners and the proxies of other assets. It's really, really a good time to be in the space. Thank you all for being here. Have a good evening. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.